Alright, so when I want to solve by... So in this video we're going to talk about factoring by guess and check method and also the difference of squares. So when we want to do guess and check, there are easy problems to do with guess and check and then there's tougher problems to do with guess and check. So an easy problem to do with guess and check would be something along the lines of x squared minus 4x minus 5. And the reason it's easy is there's a 1 in front of the x squared. Anytime that's the case, guess and check for sure. So the idea between guess and check versus the AC method, which is in a different video, is you really just try to go directly into your answer. So you're focused on the first and the last term. So 1x squared, that breaks up into x and x, put in the first spots, and 5, that can only be 5 and 1, and we put in the last spots. But we need to make sure that those factors add up to 4. Now, I call it the telephone method. Now, if there's a 1 out front here, this part really isn't that important because this x out front is not bringing anything to the table. So all the numbers I have is a 1 and a 5. Happens to be 1x and a 5x. I call this the telephone check if you look like an old school telephone, maybe with a cord coming out the back here. But no big deal. I need to make sure that's a negative 4. So I need it to be a negative 5 and a positive 1. Always double check this by FOILing it out. It's x squared plus x minus 5x and the minus 5. So in the end, combine like terms, I've got it. So guess and check, I don't need to do the whole grouping thing, but I do have to double check that I do get 1 and negative 5 gives me negative 4. Also make sure that negative 5 times a positive 1 does get me negative 5. Okay, so that's all good and fine. Let's try another one. X squared minus 8x plus 16. So break it up, x and x for the x squared. Break up the 16. You got to get 8 out of that. So let's go 4 and 4. They will give us negative 8 if they're both negative. And again, the x is not really coming into play because it's 1x. Now, I can write this as x minus 4 times x minus 4, or it's x minus 4 squared. Now, again, if there's a number in front of 1, fantastic. If there isn't, something along the lines of here, 2x squared minus 3x minus 5. Alright, so here's the problem. A lot of times people go through that last little section and go, okay, well, just look at the C, right? Well, two things that multiply give me 5. Oh, 5 and 1 doesn't give me 3. So there's a little bit more going on in this problem. So 2x squared, I'm going to break that up and put them in the first spot. So it's not 1x and 1x. That doesn't give me 2x squared. That gives me x squared. So it's 2x and x. This is not symmetrical. So it does depend on where I put the 1 and where I put the 5. So this is why it's called guess and check. I'm going to guess the 1 goes here and the 5 goes here. Now I got to do that telephone check. Well, that's 10x and 1x. Now I know I don't have the signs on here, so this could be a plus or minus. Is that going to give me 3? No, I'll get 11 or 9, positive or negative. Because I can change these signs out here too. But it's not going to work. So the guess of putting the 1 and the 5 here is wrong, didn't check. So let's try switching that up. 5 and 1. Okay, well I get a 2x and a 5x. And that give me negative 3x. Well, it does if the 5 is a negative. So put the negative on the 5 and the positive on the 1. Now we know it's positive 2x. That's the 2x times this 1. So as long as the 1's positive, 2x becomes a positive. Tossing a number out front really makes the guess and check method much more difficult. Not impossible, nowhere near impossible. That's actually how I did my problems when I was a student. But it makes it much more difficult. Alright, so if you don't like this, you can always go back to the AC method. Let's try another. We'll make this one a little bit harder. 5x squared minus 19x minus 4. Let's go the whole way through here. We're going to set this equal to 0, and we're going to solve as well. Okay, so I'm going to break up 5x squared. There's not really any options for that. That's just 5x and x. But you'll notice here, I mean, if I had 6, I could go 6x and 1x. I could go 2 and 3. If this was like a 12, there's all sorts of options. When they're a little bit more straightforward in what their numbers are, like 2 and 5, they're prime numbers. Guess and check's not so bad, but the second that you stop getting prime numbers here, you get problems, because let's say I try to go 2 and 2. It's kind of an obvious way to try to split up 4. Here's my check. 10x and 2x. Is that going to get me 19? No way. So you say, okay, well, last time we had that, we just switched them around. Well, if I put the 2 here and the 2 here, well, that doesn't change anything. So now, form 1. Well, let's try here, form 1. Let's see what I get. I got 5 and 4. That get me 19. So after a couple of tries, people start to despair, and they say, well, this isn't going to work at all. 1 and 4, let's try that. Well, form 1 didn't make... Oh, but what do I have? I've got 20x, and I get 1x. And I want to get to 19x. So, well, that works for negative 19 if the 20 is negative and the 1 is positive. Okay, well, that works. So let's just double check here. How do I make the 20 negative? I don't see a 20. Put the negative here. Will that work? Well, no, because that's negative 1 times x. That's a negative 1x. So that negative has to go here on a 4. So 5 times a negative 4 is negative 20. Huh. So it's one of those things, if you can read through a step and you can kind of see the effects of what numbers you're picking, you can kind of do something like checking in your head as you're picking the numbers. Guess and check can be pretty quick. If you can't, then you do the AC method. And again, AC, negative 5x squared times negative 4, break up to negative 20x squared, two numbers that equal negative 19. Well, all of a sudden that's pretty easy. I'm going to go, okay, well, 20 getting 19, negative 20, and 1. Next. And then you do your grouping. So there's no way that you can get this in one step doing the AC method, but it's really easy to do the AC method. Alright, now we're not done, because I said we're going to solve this one, so we set each of these factors equal to 0. And then you solve each little equation. 5x equals negative 1, x equals 4, so x equals negative 1 over 5, and 4. So again, if you like guess and check, wonderful. That's what I liked as a student. Now as a teacher, I realized that it takes some intuition. And if you are very good at math, and if you can kind of puzzle through it, more power to you. Guess and check is really what you're going to use a lot in your higher level math. Usually the factoring doesn't get much more difficult than this first one here. So if you see a 1 in front of the x squared, you really want to do guess and check. So let's do one more of those where it's a very basic guess and check, and we'll see kind of how that looks. Because it is so much faster. So this is where you really want to use it. X squared plus 2x minus 15. And we'll do the whole thing equal to 0. Let's break it up, x and x, no other options, 15, probably 3 and 5. I want to get to positive 2, so make the 5 positive, the 3 negative. Everything seems to check out. I get a positive 5 minus 3, guess give me a positive 2. Negative 3 times a positive 5, that's going to be negative 15. Alright, so I'm equal to 0, and I'm hoping you can see why this should be 3 and negative 5. And I know I did it kind of quick, but I did explain every part of my step. If there's a 1 out front, these problems can be done, if you really know what you're talking about, in a couple seconds. If you try to go AC method, it won't take you long, but the class is going to be moving on to the next problem in that sort of problem. Okay, next thing we talk about is difference of squares, and I'm going to deal with this as a guess and check problem. So let's go to x squared minus 4. Very, very basic. I don't see a trinomial. Well, here's what you want to think about it. X squared plus 0x minus 4 is exactly the same thing. So now I've got a 1 out front here, so I'm just going to try to break it up. X and x, factors 4, probably 2 and 2. I want them to cancel out in the middle. I want it to be 0, so plus 2 and minus 2. They do multiply to get me -4, so it works. Now, that's the basis for it, but when we got something like 9x squared minus 25y squared, it's a little bit harder to do it that way. So what you want to really do is, assuming that I have a difference, minus, and squares, things that can be split up evenly, 9, 25, 16, 64, 100, 121, all of those perfect squares, I can just split them up evenly, 3x and 3x. Now here's the 25y squared. Well, 5y and 5y, it's a difference, so one has to be a plus and one has to be a minus. And the order does not matter whatsoever. That's really it. Split them up evenly. One's a plus, one's a minus. Let's try to use that to solve something here really quick. So let's say we got 3x cubed equals 75x. Okay, at first this doesn't look at all like these last couple of problems. Well, when you're solving, first rule solving, set it equal to 0. So 3x cubed minus 75x equals 0. Okay. Second rule of factoring is, well, first rule of factoring, let's take out a GCF. First rule of solving is set it equal to 0. So you can take a 3x out, leaving us with x squared minus 25. You're going to find a lot of times people have to reuse numbers because, well, there's only so many numbers that are perfect squares. We've got 1, we got 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100, 121, 144, I think 169, kind of running out pretty quick here. The ones I can just do off the top of my head. So these are basic ones. So when you're talking about different squares, you only got these numbers to pick from. So you're going to find 25 will get repeated a bunch. But anyway, ignore the 3x for now. Leave it out front. Split them up. 5 and 5. One's a plus, one's a minus. Then we set each of these equal to 0. Now 3x seems to throw people off a little bit. The other ones I'm hoping that we can get -5 from and +5 from pretty quick. So what do I do with that 3? Well, if I divide both sides by 3, 0 divided by 3 is 0. So I get 0 as my third 0. And that's it.